Hello and welcome to Talking with Famous People. We're on part 3 of the shooting question. We've got some multiple choice answers, many possibilities, many things to blame. Whom shall we blame? Everybody's favorite game. Well, the answer to the question can be found somewhere in this post. Now, we've gone over the first 4 or 5 of them already in the first couple parts. And we're down to number... I'm looking forward here. Okay, we're down to letter F. Loose immigration laws that permit too many in. Do you think that's a problem? Do you think that's something to be blamed here in this question regarding the shootings?
Mm, I'd have to say the current state of things, probably not. I'd say more of these people that are doing these extremist acts, they're not actually like nationals. They're people that were born here. Maybe
Was
the
that guy
family's
born
values sort
here?
of lined up to this kind of thing.
Was that
What's
guy
that?
born here? Was that guy born here?
Yeah, that guy was born here. Yeah, that guy was born here.
What made him go? What made him go
I mean,
ISIS?
I think his
What?
parents or his grandparents.
Oh, so he was raised Muslim or what?
Yeah. I think his grandparents or his parents were immigrants. So
Okay, so I agree that this has nothing to do with immigration at all. Then, and for people to utilize it to make that argument is
yeah, I
just
mean,
being ridiculous. He's not even first. He's not even first generation immigrant. So
what's that? Sorry.
was he religious? Well, he was. He ascribed
Yeah.
to ISIS type of Muslim ideology, and I guess he was. I don't know. Was he raised religious? Is another question. I don't know.
Yeah, it more tends to be that these are people that again are lost in some way. They don't know what to do, and they tend to reconnect with their roots, so to speak. So most of the time, it's people that are born and raised here that end up doing this kind of thing. Not people that have just recently immigrated, because usually they immigrate here because they do agree with our values in some respect, even if they are Muslim. So
What do you
it's
think
more
about?
just down the line that it tends to reappear.
Okay, so we see it as a. That would tend to lead one to think that it's more of an ideological issue than a uh, cultural issue almost. So what about G? Disenfranchisement of oppressed groups that causes them to lash out in unacceptable but understandable violence. What do you think about that?
Again, that's sort of a funny one because you could say that maybe if there was a better community around, if the family didn't ascribe to these values, maybe it wouldn't have happened. But I don't think there's any way the government or some governing body could you know have welfare for these kinds of people, other than like therapy possibly, but even that's a stretch.
Um, it's interesting because in some instances this sort of argument's made, this disenfranchisement argument. In some instances it's not. Like nobody would dream of making it if the offending group, like that Santa Barbara shooter, shot those chicks because he felt like he wasn't the chicks didn't like him basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody says, well, he's a disenfranchised group because chicks don't like him. So that's why I don't buy that whole argument. I don't buy that whole argument. Jay. All right, so let's go to look at the next thing. What about F? The corporate greed underlying the gun industry or something else? Does corporate greed have anything to do with this particular shooting?
No, I wouldn't characterize the gun industry as having corporate greed. It's more just like eccentrics and kind of those types of people, gun nuts that really drive that industry. Like gun show type mentality. we have a lot of guns. It's a product of demand, so I don't really see corporate greed as a problem. If you want to characterize anything as corporate greed, more so just like corporations that are held under corporate welfare, like the whole Dareprim thing recently.
The what? The Darepro thing? What is that?
The Dareprim case.
I don't know what it is.
Martin Shkreli, you heard of him?
Uh-uh.
He owns a drug manufacturing company that acquired a HIV/AIDS drug that used to be like what's it $15 a tablet. It helps with it helps mitigate the virus.
It helps people not die.
It helps mitigate the HIV virus. Yeah, exactly. I'm fuzzy on the science, but I'm pretty sure it's sort of like an artificial antibody for HIV.
Okay, so what about it? So he bought the company and raised the price, or what? So he bought the company and raised the price, or what?
Yeah, he raised the price. He raised the price to like $200 a pill. So yeah, but it was fine because Medicare took care of it for all the patients that needed it. So it was sort of means to an end to show that the government's sort of coddling these drug companies. They can just raise prices to whatever they want and it's okay. And once that government money evaporates, then nobody's getting their drugs. So yeah.
Yeah, well, nobody feels bad about wasting government money. Nobody feels bad about wasting government money.
Yeah, but if it's yeah,
because it's plunder.
But, when you're just filling a demand that's already there and people are going to buy the guns anyway, I don't really see the case for corporate greed there. That's just people trying to make money.
Okay, so Unify indicated a little while back, I saw in the chat, that he thinks it's irresponsible lawmaking. Is that regarding gun control laws, or what kind of laws do you think would be helpful for, in hindsight, that we could have had that would have prevented something like this? Enforcing existing gun laws and regulations. Okay, so do you think he would have was he in violation of an existing gun law or regulation? Was an existing gun law or background check or regulation not enforced that should have been enforced here?
It's also interesting to bring up that this guy did go through background checks and he was investigated by the FBI 3 times before this event happened. So he was on the radar.
So then, okay.
But somehow they didn't know about this.
Well, look, if he's investigated by the FBI 3 times, then
yeah, he was directly questioned by FBI officers. So
that's frustrating. It's frustrating because I can picture the situation. And I can picture it going the way I would have suggested it ought to go, and it end up going badly. Which is, FBI, if you don't have any proof that he's doing anything wrong, you have no cause to blah, 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 blah. But they had a lot of suspicion, a lot of prediction, and their prediction ended up being right. There's a problem, and we probably should have done something. That's frustrating to me. It breaks my system a little bit, I don't like that. I don't know what to do about it.
Honestly,
but I don't like it at all.
I have no problem with the FBI pursuing further investigation beyond, like interrogation. If this guy was a legitimate threat, he was buying a lot of guns. He identified with people and ideologies that were directly in opposition to American freedoms and liberties. And he was contemplating violence, then I don't really see any point to not pursue that investigation.
Right.
And I think, keep track of its whereabouts, and if he's going.
I think the key is the FBI in situations like that should go ahead and seize the guns, but they should seize them with a big interest in making transparent exactly what's going on. Look, we're about to seize this guy's guns in a violation of his rights. We want to explain to you guys, everybody, why we think this is an exception that needs to be made. And we want to give him a chance to...
Yeah, if you...
defend himself publicly and say,
Yeah,
no, this isn't the case, or whatever, something like that. Some way in which the government acknowledges that, okay, we need to do something, and acknowledges that it's kind of wrong, but that if we're wrong, we're going to make our wrongness public so that everyone can see we're not arbitrarily doing shit. It's like, that's the problem. So many of these government applications of force are arbitrary, and some of them aren't. And distinguishing between that is a tough order of business.
Yeah. As long as they had warrants, as long as they had a paper trail, and this guy had his right to defend himself by a jury of his peers, that's fine in my mind.
But he hadn't done anything. We aren't even talking about arresting him. As far as I know, we're not even talking about arresting him or charging him with a crime. We're just talking about taking away his guns.
No, but if he wanted to, he could prosecute this investigation and call him harassment if it was all just bullshit.
Right,
so,
I know.
He has his right to litigate.
I know he does. Yeah. And this is what I'm saying is there needs to be some sort of mechanism in place that says there's sufficient social evidence to justify intervention in this instance, but it's got to be public. Everything's got to be transparent. To the extent that the individual being restricted doesn't want it public, then that could be arranged to accommodate that to a certain extent. But I mean, to a lot of person, if you're going to have a government that functions efficiently, to me the most important factor is that everything be public, everything be transparent. So
exactly,
I mean,
yeah, and I mean it's all the same. It's all the same if the regular cops are arresting a suspect. They ask them to do a strip search, make sure there's no weapons on him. All the same.
What do you think about this?
It's an investigation.
What do you think about this? A fundamental failure of the family to inculcate our children with robust and grounded values.
That does sound a bit true in some way, because again, if this guy had some recourse, it probably would be with his family, but it appears that they just weren't there for him, or if he did try to reach out to them, it didn't work, obviously.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that? Okay, but can you imagine? Do we know it should? But should it be that way individually defined? Let me see what he says there. Chat.
I don't see it as any grounds to say that they're that his family might be bad people if they haven't done anything wrong themselves. But it still seems like he wasn't grounded in values that a lot of us would share. As far as being kind to your neighbor and that kind of a thing, or to have benefit of the doubt for someone who you think is wrong. Because he just kills him. So,
what do you think about what do you think about the possibility of anti-gay sentiment in America to be responsible for this in some sense? Because the guy was supposedly gay, right?
Yeah. That. I'd have to say that maybe, possibly, like, the liberal culture has sort of just used gay as a vehicle for different agendas and policy decisions. They haven't really cared for gays directly. I'd say it's the gays that more help themselves at this point than anybody else.
But I'm saying, do you...
There is a bit of a...
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's more of the gays helping themselves. There's not really a focus to say, like, these people are trying to kill gays or these people are trying to kill gays.
But do you agree that in general
there's nothing
homosexuality
really of that nature going on?
But do you agree in general that homosexuality is less accepted by culture in general than heterosexuality? That ours is a heteronormative culture, as they say?
Yeah, that's a subject of some debate. I'd say it is a bit of a it is a heteronormative culture. There's more heterosexual people than homosexual people. Just as far as population goes. But
Do you think that's responsible for his self-loathing? Oops. Looks like John has frozen. Usually that's me. Let's see what the internet says. No, it says it's fine right now. Okay, well, I think that's about it. He says it is. It is responsible for his self-loathing, says Unify. Unify, are you still there? Oh, cool. So it's definitely John who disconnected. So the last topic here is, well, the last two are the previous, it's mental health, society not dealing with mental health well enough. And then the last one is it the guy himself? Is it just him responsible individually? And there's not really much more to say about it. Any thoughts you want to toss in there on that question, Unify? Because, I mean, when I wrote this multiple choice question on Facebook, my intention was for that last answer to be really the correct answer and for everyone to go, oh, I see, we're worrying about abstract things rather than actual moral agents. But that's not how it was interpreted. People have interpreted it to suggest any of those things could be equally culpable. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, you have
sorry,
to have an
my internet decided to go out this time.
Yeah, we're taking turns tonight, apparently. Okay, so basically, we're basically at the end here. We had the mental health issue and then the issue of individual moral agency. Should we, as a society, deal with mental health differently? Are we not spending enough government money on mental health? Are we what?
uh, I think if you want to have any kind of welfare for the general public, it should be focused or pretty well focused on mental health, I'd say, because that's we sort of have this dismissal of community these days, and there's not, if you don't have a circle of friends, if you don't have a circle of family that really look after you, you don't have much else to fall back on.
Right.
If you're financially destitute or you just don't know where to go. So looking out for these people, if they do appear, and giving them the option to get into counseling if they need it, or if somebody feels that they need it, is a better option than allowing them to let this rest in their head, possibly commit a crime and go to jail or kill themselves. So
Well, Unify asks, how would you know
and
who has
that
a
would be time better spent than just giving.
Unify asks, how would you know who has a mental health problem and who doesn't? I would say that's kind of a key question. When we talk about mental health services, they're typically going to be directed towards one of a couple of possible things. One being substance abuse, the most common kind of mental health issue, and number two being things like schizophrenia and personality problems that tend to correlate with homelessness and other non-functioning societal members.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important.
Just to
go ahead.
Just to make it very available to the public, that a lot of people would know that it's there for them, and also if anyone were to cause harm to themselves or to others, that wouldn't be a felony, a crime, or something like that. That they have that option before they're just hunted down by authorities until they do something wrong.
Well, yeah, it's a tricky business for sure. As far as substance abuse, though, my position on substance abuse is, well, I think substance abuse is a mental health problem. To answer Unify's question, he asked, does substance abuse automatically mean you have a mental health problem? I think substance abuse is a mental health problem. And I think it's a mental health problem that's best solved by things that cost nothing, like Alcoholics Anonymous. So, in that regard, I don't think that that kind of mental health problem is addressed well with government funds at all. And I think other kind of mental health problems, I think there's a lot of mental health problems that can be solved with equivalent approaches.
I just I see it more as a problem that we have a misallocation of funds in general. Like we'll put plenty of money into welfare programs, we'll put plenty of money into prisons, and we'll allow corporate welfare for profit prisons, but we don't really focus on helping people in those situations. We just put them.
Well, I think they try to help people in the situations. They just are using protocols that aren't very helpful. That ultimately people can't be managed with these standardized algorithms and rules and legislatively triggered things. I just don't think it's a mechanism that works well. All right, so I think we've lost John again. The problem with not allowing people to have guns is that we don't know who is that crazy until they shoot up a club. Right. So some people would advocate that we should have more people carrying guns to shoot the crazy people. John and I both disagree with that. I don't think so, because I don't want to be in the Wild West like that, personally. The last one is the individual. We talked about that a bit. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to that individual, and we can talk about his reasons all we want, but he's the one who's morally culpable for it. He's the one who's committed the great evil. He's dead, nothing we can do about that, and that kind of sums it up. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People. Rock and roll.